Hi everyone, it's Monica, and welcome back to Tailor-Made Cards for You. Well, it's the beginning of April, and that means it's time for another page in my art journal. So this month I wanted to create something very bright and very vibrant. With spring just around the corner, I thought it would be fun to create a spring farmer's market scene using some great cutouts from Canvas Corp brands. Now to create my background today, I am going to be working with some of my distress oxides. I'm going to be using the combination of these blues to create my sky, and I'm going to also be working with a couple of new stamp sets that I've picked up. The stamp sets that I picked up are from Stampendous, and they are really awesome. I've been really excited to try them out, so I thought my art journal would be a great chance to do that. And then finally, I'm going to be using some of my Faber-Castell pens, and I've shared these with you before. These are the Pit Artist pens with the big brush, and they work great for my art journal. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so to begin, I'm simply taking some of my Distress Oxide ink and I'm adding it to my blending tool. And then I'm taking my blending tool and adding it to my art journal page. Now if you notice this time, I didn't add any primer to my page. I'm not adding any gesso at all. Now this was actually planned. When I was thinking of what I wanted to do for this month's art journal, I knew that I didn't want to create a page that had too much product. And when I mean product, I'm talking about a lot of the gesso that I add, maybe some acrylic paint that I've used in the past, anything that was going to weigh down my pages. And the reason for that is because you have to really be somewhat strategic when you're working in an art journal. If you have too many pages back to back that have a lot of product, then your pages are going to get a little bit too sticky or a little too heavy, and it's honestly a little bit too flimsy. So I wanted to create a page that had more ink versus more product, and that's why I'm going to be staying away from some of the acrylic paint this time. It's a good idea to mix up your pages and not have the same types of products on every single page, and that way hopefully your journal will flow a little bit easier. Now, I'm a beginner, so believe me, I'm no expert, but this is just what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling in my own journal. I've noticed a lot of my pages are really heavy, and I've made 3 pages so far. I've had 3 months worth of pages, and the pages are pretty heavy. So I decided this month to work mostly with inks and things that wouldn't create a lot of weight on my pages. So once I had a nice coverage of all 3 of the Distress Oxides, I wanted to add a little bit more contrast to the blues. And this is where I brought in my antique linen. Now, as you can see, I didn't have to use a blending tool for this one. I just simply took the antique linen and I added it directly to my page. When I'm looking to create contrast, I don't necessarily want it to be perfect, and that's why I took it directly to the page. And then I came in with one of my new Stampendous background stamps to create just a little bit more interest. Now the ink that I'm using today is one of the inks that you've probably seen me use on several of my videos, and it is my go-to ink. The ink is from Ranger, and it's black Archival ink, and I really like the coverage that I get with this ink. It's very crisp and it dries fairly quickly, and it definitely is one of my favorites. The Archival ink comes in several colors, so I do plan on adding some more to my collection. So hopefully you'll be seeing some more colors in the near future. Now the images that I'm using are from a 12 by 12 sheet of paper from Canvas Corp brand. And to save time, I did pre-fussy cut these images before I got on camera. I wasn't really sure what images I was going to use, so I cut out all of the images, and then I decided to go ahead and work with my layout. I knew I wanted to create some sort of a spring Easter scene, but not necessarily Easter. And that's where I came up with the idea to create a farmer's market. As you can see, I had this really great cabbage along with this carrot, but the cabbage was just a little bit too big, so I'm going to have to save that for another video, and I decided to go with the carrot. Now I'm going to be adhering these images to my page using some of my Distress Collage medium. Now, I've shared this collage medium with you before, and one thing you want to make sure that you are careful is not to add any of that to the top of your image. And this is really important because it does work as a sealant. So if I were to accidentally add some of that collage medium over my uncolored images, then it would be difficult for me to color them. So while I'm going to be using it as an adhesive, you want to make sure that you don't use it as a sealant until after you colored your images. Now, if you've noticed when I'm coloring my images, I'm using 3 different types of coloring supplies. I'm of course using my Copic markers, which are great for shadows and blending. And then I'm using my distress crayons, and then I'm also using my new Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pens. Now, one thing that I want to share with you with these 3 mediums, while the Copic markers are really great for shadowing, they really don't smear very well. So that's why I had to actually come in with my distress crayons and also my Pitt Artist markers. Those 2 products will smear really nicely, and I like to have somewhat of a grunge or smear on my art journals, and that's why I brought in all 3 colors. It might have seemed kind of odd to use all 3 colors together, but I really liked the combination, and I just had to work with my different types of mediums to get the effect that I wanted. And that's really what art journaling is about, is trying different things, working with your product to see exactly what you can do with them, and that's why I decided to use all 3 of them together. Now, if you remember on my video from last month, I created a coffee scene, and I had a coffee girl, and she ended up with a big coffee bean right in the middle of her face. And some of the comments were really cute. Someone said that the coffee bean can be her nose, and that really made me laugh. But this month I decided to be a little bit more strategic with my layout, and I made sure when I was adding my images to leave a space for my stamp. I knew I wanted to add this new stamp that says antiques, and I wanted to create kind of like a sign, so I made sure I had some open space for this. Now, one thing that you might notice that I'm doing here is I am adding some of that collage medium around my stamped image. And really what I'm doing is I'm using it as a lubricant to smear my brown Pitt pen. I've noticed that the Pitt pens smudge a lot easier when they are a little bit wet or if they do have some moisture. So after I outlined my sign and I added some of those lines from my wood grain, I did take some of that adhesive and I just smeared it around the sign so that way it would look more of a distressed looking sign. And then I brought in my heating tool to dry it up. Now, the look that I was going for was to create some sort of a sign that was stuck in the ground. So while this was an awesome stamp that said Antiques Open, it wasn't really a sign post. So I had to draw my little sign post to stick in the ground. So I did again use my Artist Pitt pens from Faber-Castell, and I just drew a post, and then I'm using this background stamp to create more of a wood grain. Now, these Artist Pitt pens from Faber-Castell are really cool. They're not like Copic markers, and what I'm saying by that is when you color them, the ink doesn't seep through to the back of your page. These are India baked inks, and this is a new concept for me. This isn't anything I had ever heard of until I actually got these pens. But there's so many things that you can do with these pens. You can dry stamp like I just did with my background a few minutes ago. You can use them to highlight and shade because they smudge really nicely. And not only can you stamp on paper, but you can also stamp on fabric. Now, when you're using the pens as an outline and you want them to smear, as I indicated before, it's best if you have a little bit of lubrication or a little bit of moisture. Now, I've been using my collage medium to smear my ink, but you could also use gesso to smear it. I think that would work really well also. You just want it to be a little bit moist. A baby wipe might work as well, but a baby wipe might actually wipe off the ink. So you may want to go with something just to moisten your finger and not actually as a cloth to wipe through it. Okay, so after I added a few small butterflies for additional interest, it was time to create my sentiment. And as I indicated before, I'm creating somewhat of a farmer's market scene. So I thought, what better sentiment to use than something that says farmer's market. This letter set is an old Tim Holtz collection, but it's great. I use it all the time. And it's funny how some of our oldest stamp sets are the ones that we continue to go back to over and over again. And this stamp set is one of them. I love the way that the letters look a little bit distressed, and they're not perfect, and that's exactly what I was going for. I'm not only on this art journal page, but a lot of my art as well. I love to have it look just a little bit old and a little bit imperfect, and these letters are perfect for that. Now, I knew that I wouldn't have enough room to stamp out the entire phrase farmers market, so I decided to stamp the word farmers with my ink stamps, and then I came in with my label letters to add market. The label letters is a product from Tim Holtz, and it's a product that I use often. If you've seen any of my other card videos, you probably have seen me use this product before. Now, while I love stamping sentiments, you can't always get the exact sentiment that you want. And these little label letters are perfect additions to any sentiment. So as I'm doing here, I'm stamping out the word farmers, and then I'm going to come in at the bottom and just put market. And I really like the look or the contrast from a large word to a smaller word. I think it really has a really nice aesthetic look. Now, when I'm adhering my label letters, I do like to use my tweezers, and that's so I can easily hold my letters to make sure that I line them up exactly perfect. And these label letters are stickers, but to make sure that they do adhere nicely to my page, I always come in and add some collage medium on top of my letters just to make sure that they adhere and stick nicely. Now, these label letters are a staple in my craft room, and they're not very expensive. You actually get 6 sheets of label letters, and each sheet has multiple letters, so the letters will go a long way. Now, of course, there's going to be some letters that you probably will use more often than others, and as you can see here, some of my pages are getting pretty clear, but I think that I've actually gone through about 3 pages here. And I still have 3 more that I haven't even jumped into yet. So I really do get a lot of use out of these labels, and it's a really good price point for what you get. All right, so once I had my sentiment stamped as well as adhered, I wanted to add just a little bit more highlight to my stamped letters. And this is where I decided to come in with my white Pit Artist pen. The white pen was just enough to add a little bit of a highlight to my letters. So once I finished highlighting the letters, I decided that I also wanted to frame my smaller sentiment that said market. So to do this, I brought out the brown Faber-Market pen, and I highlighted the letters, and then I smudged it just to give it a little bit more of a distressed look. So at this point, we are almost done with the page. I just wanted to add a few more highlights. And to do this, I wanted to get out another one of my distress inks and highlight just the edge of the pages. Now, to do this, I'm just simply taking my ink and I'm just rubbing it across the edges. And this creates a really nice contrast. So after I added the additional color, I decided I did want to add a little bit more contrast. So I decided to get one more of my background stamps to frame the edge. The stamp set that I'm going to be using is from Finnabar, and it really isn't a new set, but it's a set that I don't use very often. Hopefully I'll be changing that in the near future, and I'll be able to use it just a bit more, not only in my art journals, but also in some of my card making. The set also had those butterflies that I used earlier, so it's a really fantastic set, and I'll make sure that I link up to it below. Alright, so at this point we're pretty much finished. Hopefully you've enjoyed my page that I created this month, and I've inspired you to work on your art journal this month. As always, I will leave a list of all the products that I've used to create the page along with the links to the stores. If you've enjoyed the video, I would really appreciate a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I've really enjoyed creating these 4 pages over the last 4 months, and hopefully you've enjoyed them as well. I've enjoyed it so much that I'm actually considering starting another art journal. That way I can create a few more videos throughout the month. I really want to keep this particular journal for my monthly series, and I want my pages to be sequential, so I don't want to necessarily add any pages in between because I want my months to flow. But there's nothing stopping me from creating another art journal, and hopefully you'll be able to see some of those videos in the weeks to come. All right, everyone. As always, I really appreciate your support, and thanks for stopping by. We'll see you again next month.